Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with David Campbell. He is the VP of Product Marketing at AvidXchange. David, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be part of this call. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on the call today, David. We are going to be jumping into the topic of integrated value delivery, something that you're very passionate about, as you mentioned offline. So really excited for you to share with us how marketing teams and how companies can use this to retain customers, to build their customer base. But before we do that, I'd love for you to take a second, give people some background on why you're sharing about this and what you and the team at AvidXchange are up to these days.
Sure. So integrated value delivery is a topic that's really near and dear to me because every company I've been at, and I've spent my entire career in B2B type of companies, they go through common problems in terms of how they articulate their products, how their customers view the value of those products, and their ability to sort of come to a common consensus with their customers on those things. And I've found that if you can align your customers with the way you think about value of your product, it makes a whole bunch of follow-on things a lot easier. So this is something that we're implementing at AvidXchange. It's something that I've implemented to varying degrees at other companies. And it's something that when you implement, you can get incremental value. So if you don't go all the way with it, you're still getting value at every step that you do implement. So it's a really worthwhile investment.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, let's jump right in at that point then, David. Define integrated value delivery for us in your terms.
Sure. So integrated value delivery is really this idea of being very, very disciplined in terms of defining your benefits of your products in terms of the measurable business value they deliver, and then reinforcing that measurable value throughout the entire customer experience, from the way you market to the way you sell to the way you engage with customers from a customer support standpoint, and even the way in which you contact customers in order to get them to do renewals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as we were talking offline about this idea, you mentioned your messaging and your sales processes are some of the first areas to look at and implement this concept of integrated value delivery. Give us some, for instance, there and maybe the messaging part of things.
Sure. So it all starts with one rule that everything else is predicated on, and that's your benefits must articulate some kind of measurable value. We all learn in marketing school about the differences between features and benefits, but this takes it a step further. So by measurable, I mean that you can devise a metric that would show unambiguously improvement or diminishment of that value if you were to track it. So in terms of aligning your messaging and your sales and marketing content, what that means is you take those benefits, and that's the way in which you describe value of your product in your collateral, in your presentations, in your case studies, everything that you do. It also includes things like ROI tools, and in fact, it kind of paves the way nicely for ROI tools. You can do an analysis of savings that you're providing to customers based on achieving those measurable benefits that you've defined. And that's
Mm-hmm.
going to pay off dividends later in your life cycle with those customers.
Mm-hmm. So focusing your messaging further along into, when the customer has actually implemented your product and not only, seen the benefits, but seeing that measurable value that they're getting from those benefits. Not just that it saves you time, but it saved me XYZ time this week because I did this, this, and this, right?
That's right. So since we're selling to business customers, of course, they have to make a pretty rigorous justification to buy your products, and it's particularly versus other alternatives or versus the alternative of doing nothing, maintain status quo. So what you're doing with these customers by doing this is you're arming them with the information they need to put together a business case to buy your product.
Gotcha. I love it. All right. So next, the other thing you talked about as you start to implement this idea, the strategy of integrated value delivery is actually building your product so that it can meter the value that's delivered to your customers. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is kind of like what I would say is advanced integrated value delivery. And what I mean by that is you can instrument your products to actually measure the value delivered. So for example, if one of your benefits is reducing the time to do something, then your product should be able to measure that time and then keep track of it. And over the course of, the years of owning your product, it should accumulate the total savings in time. If your product is supposed to reduce the cost of doing things, then the product could estimate the before and after cost using configurable assumptions. So, for example, if you were saving cost by, say, for example, reducing the amount of time that some analyst has to work on some problem, then you'd want to be able to configure a product with the FTE cost of that analyst, and then calculate the amount of time savings and then the amount of money savings over time, and then also allow the customer to override your assumptions about that you've input into the formula so that they can have control over that so it makes sense for their business.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Making that ROI calculator actually configurable so that, you're not locking them into your assumptions, right?
Exactly. So that the important thing here is like everything that you've done when you align your messages and your product with that, you're reinforcing your notion of value. And the most important thing that you can achieve with this is having your customers nod their head and have them look at your product in terms of that value. That way you're on the same page in terms of what they expect to get out of your product.
So, this gets my wheels turning, and I'm sure a lot of our audience, and as we were talking about offline, this is, as you've already mentioned, can be a big driver during the sales process to help, your contact prove the ROI to the rest of the team that's involved in the buying decision. But more than that, as you mentioned, getting your customers to continually nod their head at the value that they're getting out of your product. So tell us a little bit about, where this goes beyond initial customer acquisition and improving the ROI to new customers, because I think that it can have impacts further than that, right?
Oh yes, this is where things get really exciting. So really, you're laying the groundwork for all of this other kinds of wonderful things that could happen in terms of your dealing with your customers. So for example, in terms of your customer satisfaction, having that shared understanding about value means that all of your customer interactions are reinforcing how that value is measured. The data that you're getting from your product in terms of value delivery, that can be used to highlight areas where customers could be getting more value by using other parts of your product or by improving your product from a product roadmap standpoint to address anywhere where the data is showing that you're not delivering as much value as you should. It can be used as a customer satisfaction metric, so you can measure customers proactively to see how happy they are with your product before you even talk to them. And you can even use it to do things like getting proactive notification of your value promises that you're not keeping. So if you're beneath some threshold, you might want to be notified that this customer is going to be affected by that.
Yeah.
In terms of like renewals, you can know ahead of time, ahead of your renewal discussion, whether your customer is actually receiving the value that you promised, and you can take remedial action. So if I know a customer's coming up in the next 4 months for renewal, I can go run a report, figure out how well we're delivering value, and if we're not, we can take corrective action before I go out there and talk to my customer and try to get them to pony up for another year.
I gotcha. Yeah, especially seeing where the customer is specifically seeing value, that enables that salesperson that's having that renewal conversation to have a much more in-depth and on-point conversation than just, do you like the product? Do you want to continue with us, right?
Exactly. And it also, he's pre-warned about what he's going to hear. He shouldn't be surprised when he walks into that customer. Sometimes, if you don't really know, your reps can be very surprised by what they learn when they finally get to the customer site.
Yeah. What are some of the things you guys are doing internally to roll out this strategy? You mentioned it's something that you guys are working on at AvidXchange yourselves. What are some of the things you guys have seen lately?
Well, this is something that I have implemented at multiple companies to varying degrees. And as I was mentioning, you don't even have to go necessarily all the way with it to start reaping some of the benefits. If all you did was instituted a rule that said, yea, verily, all benefits from here on out are going to be measurable, business impactful benefits, if all you did was that, you would still end up with more compelling messaging and with tangible benefits that will resonate with customers better. At AvidXchange, we're kind of past the institution of measurable benefits, and now we're implementing message alignment, and we're starting to work with the product management teams to start implementing that value tracking, to start looking at, well, what's it going to take to instrument our product to track that value.
As you mentioned, not just sales enablement, but you're powering your future product roadmap, right?
That's exactly right. So once you have this data, you can weigh features against their impact on that value. And you can focus your improvements on areas where you're delivering insufficient value.
Yeah, getting very, very tactical about the decisions that you're making and backing them up with the data that supports it. That makes a ton of sense. Well, David, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you bringing this idea and some specific examples of ways that people can implement and start to think about more of this idea of integrated value delivery. If people want to follow up with you on questions on this topic or just stay in touch, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I think the best way would be on LinkedIn. My profile's at www.linkedin.com/NIN/David L. Campbell, like the soup.
Perfect. Well, we will end it with that. If you're listening to this, definitely reach out, connect with David. I think we connected there initially as well. So, David, I appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting, and thank you for being on the show, sir.
Thank you very much. I very much appreciate being here.
Becoming a thought leader doesn't just happen. If you want to build a strong personal brand and extend your reach online and offline, you need a plan. Want help developing yours? Check out Impact Summit. This one-day event is bringing together best-selling authors, professional athletes, influential CEOs, and emerging entrepreneurs, all for one purpose: to equip you to lead, influence, and inspire. Whether you're looking to build a lasting legacy with your business or extend the reach of your brand, Impact Summit speakers will share inspiring stories and practical lessons to help you on your way. Did we mention a session on launching and growing a podcast? You guessed it. You'll hear from Sweetfish Media's own James Carberry during that session. You won't want to miss all of these influencers and leaders coming together in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Ready to learn more? Check out influencerinc.co/Impact Summit. B2B Growth listeners can get 15% off the price of their tickets for this event by using the promo code SWEETFISH, SWEETFISH. So use that code, get your tickets today, and get ready to grow your brand and your influence at Impact Summit 2018.